The snow falls silently outside a sprawling estate in Las Vegas, where a living legend contemplates the weight of her own voice. Inside, Celine Dion sits surrounded by the evidence of an extraordinary life. Platinum records that line the walls, custom gowns from world tours, and photographs of sold-out stadiums across continents. But in the quiet moments, when the applause fades and the spotlights dim, what remains is something far more complex than just wealth. It's a fortune that brings her family to tears, not just for its magnitude, but for what it represents. A voice that carried a small-town girl from Quebec to the heights of global stardom, now fighting its hardest battle. A fortune built not just on vocal prowess, but on resilience in the face of unimaginable pain. At 57, Celine Dion has amassed a net worth estimated at over $800 million. Her residencies in Las Vegas alone generated more than $500 million. Her perfume line has sold millions of bottles worldwide. Her real estate portfolio spans multiple countries. But this isn't just money, it's a ledger of sacrifices, of nights spent away from her children, of a body pushed beyond its limits, and now, of a fight against a rare neurological condition that threatens the very instrument that built her empire, her voice. In 2022, Celine revealed her diagnosis of stiff person syndrome, a rare neurological disorder causing painful muscle spasms and difficulty with mobility. The condition forced her to cancel tour dates and step back from the spotlight, a spotlight she never sought for fame but rather inhabited as the only place her extraordinary gift made sense. As she navigates this chapter, her fortune has taken on new meaning. It's no longer just a measure of success but a safety net for a future suddenly uncertain. If you've ever heard Celine Dion sing "My Heart Will Go On," you know the power of her voice to pierce through the noise of everyday life and touch something elemental within us. But what you might not know is the cost of that power, the years of training, the personal losses, and now the physical toll that has left her reconsidering everything she built. The question isn't just what will happen to Celine Dion's fortune. The question is what happens when a voice that defined an era must find a new way to speak. How does a woman whose identity has been so intertwined with her ability to sing navigate a world where that ability is threatened? And what lessons might her journey hold for all of us about resilience, reinvention, and the true meaning of wealth? The answer begins not in the glittering casinos of Las Vegas or the recording studios of Los Angeles, but in a small town in Quebec, where a little girl with a big voice was about to experience her first taste of both pain and possibility. Born the youngest of 14 children in the small town of Charlemagne, Quebec, Celine Dion's earliest memories are filled with the scent of baking bread in a crowded kitchen, the sounds of her siblings practicing instruments in every corner of their modest home, and the feeling of never having quite enough space, enough money, enough attention. The Dion household was rich in music but poor in material wealth. Her parents operated a small piano bar where young Celine would stand on tables to sing for patrons before she could even read the lyrics written for her. The first real scar came not from poverty, though, but from the isolation of being different. While other children played outside, Celine spent hours perfecting her voice. While classmates gossiped about normal teenage concerns, she worried about breath control and vocal damage. "Sometimes I felt like I was missing my childhood," she once confided in a rare, unguarded moment. "But when I sang, I didn't feel like the odd one out anymore. I felt like I finally belonged somewhere." This sense of otherness, of being set apart by her gift, would follow her throughout her life, creating a woman who could command stadiums, but who sometimes struggled to navigate intimate relationships. The stage became both her sanctuary and her prison, a place where she was fully alive and yet never fully known. Her childhood bedroom wall held not posters of teen heartthrobs, but pictures of Barbra Streisand and other vocal powerhouses she aspired to emulate. By 12, she had written her first song with her mother and brother, "Ce n'était qu'un rêve." It was only a dream. A title that would prove prophetic for a girl whose dreams would take her farther than anyone in Charlemagne could have imagined. But those dreams were born from a place of yearning, for stability, for validation, for a voice that would never be ignored again. And so began the journey of a girl who would build a fortune, not from inheritance or advantage, but from the only thing she truly possessed, a voice that could make the world stop and listen, a voice that would need careful guidance to reach its full potential. That guidance came in the form of René Angelil, the man who would reshape Celine's destiny. When 12-year-old Celine's brother Michel sent René a cassette tape of his sister singing, René didn't just hear a pretty voice. He heard potential unlike anything in his decades in the music industry. During their first meeting in his Montreal office, René asked Celine to sing for him. The room was stuffy, the furniture dated, and the nervous young girl stood awkwardly before this industry veteran who represented her one chance. When she finished singing, René wasn't just impressed. He was moved to tears. The story goes that he took a pencil from his desk, handed it to Celine, and said, "This will be your microphone. Make me believe you." It was the first time someone outside her family had truly seen the extent of her gift, had recognized not just what she was, but what she could become. René mortgaged his house to finance her first album. It was a staggering act of faith in a child who had never performed professionally. "He believed in me more than I believed in myself," Celine would later say. This early dynamic, René's unwavering faith coupled with Celine's determination to prove herself worthy of it, would define their relationship for decades to come. The training was relentless. English lessons to break into the international market, dental work to improve her appearance for cameras, hours of vocal training to strengthen her already remarkable instrument, all while navigating the ordinary challenges of adolescence under the extraordinary pressure of being someone's financial gamble. She wasn't working to be famous. She was working to be heard, to validate the sacrifice René had made, to prove to herself that the isolation of her childhood, all those hours practicing while other children played, had been worth it. This wasn't just ambition. It was a debt she felt she owed to everyone who had believed in her before she had accomplished anything. But fame, when it came, would arrive with complications that neither the young singer nor her mentor could have anticipated. Celine's international breakthrough came in 1988 when she represented Switzerland in the Eurovision Song Contest and won with Ne partez pas sans moi, Don't Leave Without Me. She was just 20 years old, standing on a European stage far from the Quebec of her childhood, singing in a language that wasn't her first, feeling the weight of nations watching. The lights were hot, the pressure immense, and just before going on stage she had nearly lost her voice from stress. In that moment, she later recalled feeling a strange calm descend. It was as if something said to me, "This is what you've prepared for. This is where you belong." She channeled her nerves into a performance so powerful that it catapulted her from regional success to international recognition. But here's where it gets complicated. Winning brought visibility, but not immediate American success. While Europe embraced her, the U.S. market remained elusive. Record executives worried her French-Canadian accent was too thick, her style too dramatic for American pop radio. There was a small crisis of confidence. Should she change who she was to fit the market, or trust that her authentic self would eventually find its audience? The answer came in the form of her first English-language album, Unison, released in 1990. Working with vocal coach William Riley to refine but not erase her accent, she found a compromise between authenticity and accessibility. The album's success opened doors, but it was her recording of the title song for Disney's Beauty and the Beast in 1991 that truly announced her arrival in America. Standing in the recording booth, laying down vocals for a song that would become an instant classic, Celine didn't know she was creating one of the cornerstones of her empire. She only knew she was giving everything she had to the music. The song earned her a Grammy and her first top 10 hit in the U.S., the first brick in what would become a fortress of achievement. What few people saw was the toll of this sudden success. The constant travel, the pressure to maintain vocal perfection, the scrutiny that came with visibility. Success solved some problems while creating others, a pattern that would repeat throughout her career as she climbed higher and the air grew thinner. The early 1990s saw Celine facing resistance on multiple fronts. Critics dismissed her as too sentimental, too mainstream, lacking the edge that defined much of 1990s pop music. Her relationship with Renee had evolved from professional to romantic, but they kept it hidden for years, fearing the 26-year age gap would spark scandal and potentially derail her rising career. The music industry itself seemed unsure what to do with a vocalist of her caliber in an era increasingly dominated by grunge and hip-hop. There were suggestions to reinvent her image, make her edgier, sexier, more controversial. But Celine, guided by Renee's protective instincts and her own sense of self, resisted these pressures. "I never wanted to be the coolest artist," she would later reflect. "I just wanted to be the best vocalist I could be." This commitment to her authentic artistic identity would prove prescient in an industry where trends came and went, but exceptional vocal talent remained timeless. Now, if you're wondering how Celine broke through these barriers, the answer lies in a risk that changed everything: falling into you. Released in 1996, the album represented a subtle but significant reinvention. She didn't abandon her ballad-heavy approach, but she expanded her range, incorporating more adult contemporary elements and showcasing greater vocal dynamics. The album became a commercial juggernaut, selling more than 32 million copies worldwide and winning 2 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. It was vindication for her refusal to chase trends at the expense of her artistic identity. And that's when everything changed. Just 1 year later came My Heart Will Go On, the theme from Titanic. The song wasn't just a hit, it was a global phenomenon that transcended the normal boundaries of pop music. It won an Academy Award, Golden Globe, and multiple Grammys. It became one of the best-selling singles of all time. More importantly, it cemented Celine's status as not just a successful artist, but a cultural icon. The song's emotional power and Celine's masterful interpretation of it created a perfect storm of artistry and timing that few performers ever experience. Suddenly, the girl from Charlemagne was one of the most recognizable voices on the planet. What had once been resistance transformed into opportunity, and with opportunity came the chance to build something lasting, something that would redefine what was possible for a vocal artist in the modern era. By the late 1990s, Celine Dion had established herself as one of the world's most successful recording artists. But it was her business acumen, guided by Renee's vision, that transformed success into empire. In 2003, she began her first Las Vegas residency, A New Day, at Caesars Palace. The custom-built Coliseum cost $95 million to construct, specifically designed for her performances. This wasn't just a concert series, it was a reinvention of what a Las Vegas show could be, and what a recording artist could accomplish without the grueling pace of world tours. The residency ran for 5 years, grossed over $385 million, and was seen by nearly 3 million people. It created a template that countless artists would later follow. The Coliseum itself became a chapter in her story, a permanent home for a performer who had spent her early years constantly on the move. The 4,000-seat venue with its state-of-the-art acoustics represented both artistic achievement and financial savvy. By staying in one place, Celine could maintain vocal health, be present for her family, and still perform for fans from around the world who made the pilgrimage to see her. Her second residency, Celine, which ran from 2011 to 2019, added another $250 million to her fortune. These 2 residencies alone secured her place as the highest-grossing resident performer in Las Vegas history. Beyond the stage, Celine built an empire of diversified assets. Her fragrance line, launched in 2003, has generated over $850 million in sales. Her endorsement deals with brands like L'Oréal Paris added millions more. Her management company, CDA Productions, gave her control over her career decisions in a way few artists achieve. Real estate became another significant asset class, There was the 20,000 square foot waterfront estate on Jupiter Island, Florida, complete with its own water park, which she sold for $28 million in 2017. The 8,000 square foot Las Vegas mansion with its recording studio and multiple pools. The chateau outside Montreal that held memories of her Canadian roots. Each property wasn't just an investment, but a sanctuary. Places where the public persona could fall away and the private woman could breathe. This wealth creation wasn't just about accumulation. It was about security. For herself, for her children, and for the nearly 200 employees whose livelihoods depended on her empire. Every business decision carried the weight of responsibility for those families. Every contract negotiation wasn't just about her bottom line, but about maintaining the ecosystem she had built around her talent. But here's the crucial distinction. This isn't just money. It's the physical manifestation of sacrifice. Each million represents countless nights away from home, vocal strain that sometimes left her in pain, the psychological toll of constant scrutiny, and the delicate balance of being both a global brand and a human being with normal needs for privacy and rest. For Celine, the empire wasn't the goal. It was the byproduct of excellence. The fortune was never the objective. It was the result of a commitment to her craft that began in that crowded house in Charlemagne and never wavered, even as the stages got bigger and the stakes got higher. What the financial statements couldn't show was the private cost of such sustained excellence. Behind the perfect vocals and the glamorous stage presence was a woman navigating pain that few outside her inner circle fully understood. The most public struggle was fertility. For years, Celine and Renee tried to have children, enduring the emotional roller coaster of hopes raised and dashed. She underwent multiple IVF treatments, juggling the hormonal effects with the demands of performing. In 2010, after 6 rounds of IVF, she gave birth to twin boys, Nelson and Eddie, joining their older brother, René Charles. The joy was immense, but the journey had taken a toll. Then came René's battles with cancer, first in 1999, again in 2013, and finally the battle he couldn't win, ending with his death in 2016. For 21 years, he had been her husband, but for even longer, he had been her manager, her champion, her North Star in the industry. His loss left her navigating not just grief, but a fundamental question of identity. Who was Celine Dion without René Angélil? In quiet hotel rooms after performances, there were moments fans never saw. The ice packs for vocal strain, the physical therapy to manage the demands of dancing in heels night after night, the moments of doubt that plagued even someone of her stature. Sometimes I would look in the mirror and wonder if people would still come if they knew how hard it was some nights, she once admitted. And then, in 2022, came the diagnosis that would add a new dimension to her struggles. Stiff person syndrome, a rare neurological disorder causing painful muscle spasms and progressive stiffness. For a performer whose body was her instrument, whose movement on stage was part of her artistic expression, the diagnosis was particularly cruel. In a video shared with fans, her voice steady but her eyes revealing the emotional weight, she explained her need to cancel tour dates and focus on her health. "I've been dealing with problems with my health for a long time," she said. "And it's been really difficult for me to face these challenges and to talk about everything that I've been going through." The woman who had sung through personal tragedies, who had returned to the stage shortly after losing her husband because the show must go on, was now facing a battle that couldn't be overcome through sheer will. It required a different kind of strength, the strength to step back, to prioritize healing over performing, to acknowledge limitation in a career built on seeming limitlessness. Through these private struggles, certain relationships became lifelines, anchors in the storm of celebrity and personal trials. Renee, of course, was the central figure in her life for decades. Their relationship evolved from manager-client to romantic, partners, finally marrying in 1994 in an elaborate ceremony at Montreal's Notre Dame Basilica that was broadcast live on Canadian television. Renee was more than a husband. He was the architect of her career, the buffer between her and industry pressures, the person who made business decisions so she could focus on artistry. "I never had to worry about the business side," she has said. "Renee gave me the greatest gift by handling that part so I could just sing." After his death, her mother Thérèse became an even more significant source of strength. Well into her 90s, Thérèse remained a grounding presence, a connection to Celine's roots in Quebec, a reminder of the values that preceded fame. When Thérèse passed away in 2020, it represented another profound loss, coming just 4 years after Renee's death, and in the early days of a global pandemic that added isolation to grief. Her 3 sons became her new center of gravity. René Charles, now in his 20s, and the twins Nelson and Eddie became the primary focus of her life outside of music. "My children give me purpose," she has said. "They give me a reason to keep going on days when it would be easier to give up." Not all relationships weathered the storms of fame. There were inevitable fractures with parts of the music industry, producers who didn't understand her vision, executives who saw her as a product rather than an artist. There were periods of estrangement from siblings as the disparity in wealth and lifestyle created inevitable complications in family dynamics. The cost of being Celine Dion sometimes meant difficult choices about who could remain in her inner circle. Trust became a precious commodity for someone whose life was constantly under scrutiny. Those who made it through the filters were those who saw beyond the fame to the woman beneath, those who loved Celine, not just the star. And now, as she faces her health challenges, these anchors take on new significance. They are no longer just emotional supports in a successful life. They are potential stewards of a legacy that, sooner than anyone expected, requires consideration for its future. With an estimated fortune of over $800 million and ongoing health challenges, the question of Celine Dion's legacy has taken on new urgency. This isn't just about money, it's about meaning. It's about the future of an enterprise built on a singular talent, and what happens when that talent faces limitations none could have foreseen. The financial architecture is complex and carefully constructed. There are trust funds established for her 3 sons, designed to provide for them without creating the burden of unearned wealth that has derailed so many children of the famous. There is her music catalog, whose value continues to appreciate as new generations discover her work. There are real estate holdings, business interests, and investment portfolios managed by a team of advisors who have been with her for decades. But beyond these tangible assets lies something more ephemeral, the legacy of the voice itself. The Celine Dion Foundation supports numerous causes, with particular focus on children's charities and medical research. In recent years, she has directed significant resources toward research for rare neurological conditions, including stiff person syndrome, transforming her personal struggle into hope for others with similar diagnoses. There is also the cultural legacy, 5 decades of music that has become the soundtrack for countless weddings, graduations, and moments of both celebration and consolation around the world. Her influence on vocal technique has shaped a generation of singers who grew up aspiring to her technical precision and emotional delivery. What makes a fortune like hers different from mere wealth is the question of stewardship. Who will carry not just the financial assets, but the responsibility they represent? Who will understand that this isn't just money to be spent, but a legacy to be maintained? When Renee was alive, these questions had clear answers. Now Celine has had to rebuild her support system, carefully selecting advisors who understand both the business complexities and the personal values that must guide decisions about her estate. Can wealth of this magnitude ever be a simple inheritance? Or does it come with obligations that transform it from gift to burden? What does it mean for her children to be heirs not just to financial assets, but to a name recognized around the world? These questions take on particular poignancy in light of her health challenges. At 57, Celine Dion should be in the prime of her performing life, looking ahead to decades more of creating and connecting with audiences. Instead, she must contemplate a future where her primary artistic expression, her voice and performance, may be compromised by her condition. The estate planning has necessarily become more urgent, more detailed, more focused on scenarios that might once have seemed distant concerns. The wealth that was built to provide security now must be structured to address potential long-term care needs while still preserving the legacy for her children and the causes she champions. This is the weight that comes with the wealth, the responsibility to make decisions now that will reverberate long after, the awareness that what she built must outlast her ability to actively manage it. It's a burden that brings her family to tears, not from gratitude, but from the recognition of what it represents, a transition none of them were ready to face so soon. Celine Dion now lives in what she has described as a different rhythm. The woman who once performed over 1,100 shows in her 2 Las Vegas residencies now focuses on physical therapy, medical treatments, and carefully managed rest. The voice that once seemed indefatigable now requires protection and conservation. Since her diagnosis became public, she has stepped back from performing, but not from creating. In June 2023, she released the documentary I Am Celine Dion, offering an intimate look at her struggle with stiff person syndrome and her determination to return to the stage if possible. The film shows her in physical therapy, working with vocal coaches to adapt to her new limitations, and in quiet moments with her children. "I'm not giving up," she says in one powerful scene, her voice firm despite the visible evidence of her struggle. "But I have to listen to my body now in a way I never had to before." Her medical team includes neurologists specializing in rare disorders, physical therapists, and vocal experts collaborating to develop treatments that might allow her to perform again, even if in a modified capacity. The muscles that once allowed her signature vocal power and range now require careful management to prevent painful spasms. What comes through most clearly in this chapter is her redefinition of strength. The woman who once powered through illness to avoid disappointing fans now demonstrates courage of a different kind. The courage to be vulnerable, to acknowledge limitation, to prioritize long-term health over short-term expectations. This isn't retirement. Celine has been careful not to frame it that way. It's a period of adaptation and reassessment. There are still recording projects, albeit on a schedule that accommodates her health needs. There are business decisions about her various enterprises, managed now with input from a trusted team that includes her eldest son, who has taken on a more significant role in preserving his mother's legacy. For fans, this chapter requires a shift in expectations. The woman who once seemed superhuman in her capacity for work and performance now asks for patience and understanding as she navigates an unpredictable condition. The relationship between artist and audience enters a new phase, one where appreciation for what she has already given takes precedence over expectation for what might come next. Through it all, Celine maintains the dignity and grace that have characterized her public life. There is no self-pity in her discussions of her condition, only pragmatism and determination. There's gratitude for the career she has had, rather than resentment for the challenges she now faces. "I've been blessed beyond anything I could have imagined," she has said. "Now my job is to be here for my children, to take care of my health, and to honor the gift I've been given for as long as I can, in whatever way is possible." This, perhaps, is the most profound lesson of Celine Dion's journey, that success isn't measured only in achievements, but in adaptability. That strength isn't just about powering through, but sometimes about knowing when to rest. That a legacy isn't frozen in time, but continues to evolve with each new challenge faced with honesty and courage. Why does Celine Dion's story resonate so deeply with millions around the world? Beyond the extraordinary voice, beyond the record-breaking sales and the spectacular performances, there is something in her journey that speaks to universal human experiences. Her story is one of transformation. From the shy girl in Charlemagne to global superstar, from René's protégé to the guardian of his legacy, from performer defined by vocal power to a woman redefining strength in the face of physical limitation. In each phase, she has demonstrated a quality essential to meaningful life: resilience. If you've ever had to reinvent yourself after loss, you understand something of Celine's journey after Renee's death. If you've ever faced health challenges that altered your sense of identity, you share something with her current struggle. If you've ever worked to transform early wounds into sources of strength rather than limitation, you know the emotional alchemy that has defined her career. The girl who once felt isolated by her difference, her extraordinary voice, found a way to use that very difference to connect with millions. The child who grew up with material scarcity created abundance, not just for herself, but for hundreds of employees and thousands of beneficiaries of her charitable work. The woman who faced repeated heartbreak in her quest to become a mother eventually created a family that now stands as her greatest joy and most important legacy. This is why her fortune brings her family to tears, not because of its magnitude, but because they understand its true composition. It isn't made of money alone, but of perseverance, of courage, of the will to keep going when it would have been easier to stop. It represents not just what she earned, but who she had to become in order to earn it. In a culture often obsessed with overnight success and instant fame, Celine Dion represents something increasingly rare, a life of sustained excellence, of craftsmanship honed over decades, of artistry that prioritized substance over spectacle. Her fortune isn't just financial capital. It's the accumulated wisdom of a life lived with intention and integrity. This, ultimately, is the gift she offers us all, a reminder that our greatest wealth lies not in what we accumulate, but in what we overcome. Not in the applause we receive, but in the resilience we develop when the applause fades and we must find new reasons to continue. Celine Dion's journey continues, now in a different key, but with the same essential melody. Determination, grace, and an unwavering commitment to moving forward. Her voice, whether heard from the stage or through the example of her life, remains a powerful reminder of what is possible when talent meets tenacity. To speak of Celine Dion is to speak of a voice that has accompanied millions through their most significant moments. The weddings, the graduations, the memorials, the quiet moments of both joy and sorrow. It is to speak of a woman who transformed vocal prowess into cultural impact, who built a fortune not as an end in itself, but as a means of creating security for those she loves and support for causes she believes in. For nearly 5 decades, she has given us anthems of resilience like The Power of Love and I'm Alive. She has articulated our deepest emotions when our own words failed us. She has demonstrated what it means to pursue excellence not for acclaim, but for the satisfaction of knowing you've honored your gift to its fullest expression. As she navigates this challenging chapter with characteristic grace, she adds another dimension to her legacy, showing us how to face adversity not with denial, but with dignity, not with surrender, but with strategic adaptation. The voice that once soared to seemingly impossible heights now speaks to us in a different way, reminding us that strength comes in many forms. If her music has ever carried you through a difficult moment, if her story of persistence has ever inspired you to continue when obstacles seemed insurmountable, consider leaving a small tribute below. Even a single like is a whisper of gratitude for an artist who has given so much of herself to her craft and to her audience. The fortune Celine Dion leaves behind, whether we speak of her financial assets or her artistic legacy, is not measured primarily in dollars, but in lives touched, in moments scored by her music, in the example she sets of resilience in the face of life's inevitable challenges. It is a fortune, built note by note, performance by performance, challenge by challenge, a testament not just to extraordinary talent, but to the extraordinary heart behind the voice.